So today we're looking at a recent book on historical World War II fighting systems. Hi guys, my name is Joe and welcome to Fighting Words, the martial arts library. On this channel I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related subjects. The subject for today's review is the Shanghai School of Street Fighting, published in 2020, and the author is Tommy Joe Moore. As far as the background of the author, Mr. Moore is a competitive boxer and judoka. He also has a fascination with what might be called historical Western martial arts, but kind of recent history. So he's been active in the revival of Bartitsu in the UK, and as the title of this book would suggest, he gets into the World War II combatives, specifically those by W.E. Fairbairn, who was originally part of the Shanghai Municipal Police Force. As far as the book itself, it's actually sort of printed lengthwise, which gives it a bit of a unique shape. You can see there are color photos. The methods in the book are drawn from W.E. Fairbairn's works. He was most notable for the book Get Tough, but he also published several other books during his lifetime. So Mr. Moore draws from kind of a broad but similar catalog of techniques for this book. The beginning of the book starts off talking about the basic biography of Fairbairn, specifically about his time in the Shanghai Municipal Police Force. It also goes over some fighting principles as well as stances. The author does note that Fairbairn didn't really have any stances in what he was showing, and as we'll see throughout the book, the author sort of fills in some gaps of Fairbairn's system. There are, for instance, no defensive maneuvers as far as like blocks and things. So we see the author sort of fill in some gaps, including, in this case, discussing the use of stances, which, again, Fairbairn didn't really cover. Once we get into the technical side of the book, we start off with a striking section. This covers the edge of the hand blow, and the author actually covers this extensively, going over multiple different situations in which he would use this. He also covers the palm strike, or the chin jab, as it was known in Fairbairn's system. Some other open hand blows, a little bit when it comes to boxing, especially the so-called matchbook trick. And that was, you're holding a matchbook in your hands as you're throwing a hook. I will say it's notable. I'm not a big fan of edge of hand blows, but the author had me sort of reconsidering them. He notes that once you make contact, you can then use that open hand to grab the opponent. I'm like, okay, I can see that. As far as the kicks in the striking section, we're pretty much limited to just front and side kicks as far as this part goes. The standing grappling section includes a number of jiu-jitsu-like throws, as well as come-alongs and strangles. So in this section you'll see things like the rear naked choke, you'll see hip throws, the wrist lock throw, similar to kotegaeshi that you would see in Aikido. It also includes the scissors takedown, kani basami, as well as Fairbairn's backbreaker, which is basically a pro wrestling style backbreaker where you lift the guy up and thump him over your knee. The next section is, I would say, very valuable for modern audiences because it covers the habitual acts of physical violence. And again, this is where the author is sort of inserting some modern methodologies in here. Still using Fairbairn's techniques, he will go over things like defenses against swings or grabs from various positions. The defenses are very reminiscent of traditional jiu-jitsu, which really isn't much of a surprise considering Fairbairn's background included some of that. So we will see generally like an initial strike from the defender to sort of distract the attacker, and then the use of things like locks or throws or heavier strikes in order to finish up the attacker. There's a chapter on weapons following that. That includes the use of the Fairbairn-style knife, which is sort of a stiletto-style knife. There's the use of the baton, including how to wrap it around your wrist, as far as, a baton with a strap on it. And then there's the use of the smatchet, which is what happens when a Bowie knife and a gladius fall in love. This is a heavy weapon with a leaf-shaped blade. It actually was issued to a few different forces during World War II. Following that is a section on defense against weapons. This includes the use of a World War II style British helmet. It also includes empty hand responses against things like knives, handguns, and rifles. Toward the end of the book, we get a short chapter on milling, which, think of it in terms of street boxing, so, punches to the throat and the like. Fairbairn didn't include a whole lot of boxing or punching techniques in his works. He was a fan of the idea of the act of milling, which in the military is putting on the boxing gloves and just, for like 30 seconds, just sort of going at it in order to build aggression, get used to pain. So using that as sort of a base, the author, who has a strong boxing background, decided to include, again, some street boxing in this. As an aside, the author actually has a book called Boxing on the Cobbles. It's another one I have. I'll get around to reviewing it sometime. We also get a chapter on what he refers to as extracurricular. So things that align with what Fairbairn was teaching but may not have been included in the, let's say, the canon curriculum of Fairbairn's works, and these include things like open hand slaps and various different elbow strikes. The final chapter looks to cover situations that soldiers in World War II may have found themselves in. So, if you're kneeling while someone's holding a rifle, holding you hostage, or somebody's holding you at knife point. And these are similar to the defenses that were shown earlier, but again, situationally, it seems to harken back more to historical situations as opposed to what many modern people would find themselves in. As far as the prose go, the techniques are very simple, easy to adapt. The book itself, as far as the presentation of techniques, is very cohesive. So, everything ends with a chin jab, or an edge of the hand blow, or a throw that you've seen before. So, in that case, it all sort of blends together very well. And from the works that I've seen from W.A. Fairbairn, it seems very true to his system. So if you are a fan of W.A. Fairbairn's works, this is going to be a good supplement, in my opinion. As far as the cons go, there are some editing errors. There's one section where he's talking about grab the guy's left hand, and he's clearly grabbing his right hand. And if it happened once or twice, that would be something. It seems to happen sporadically throughout the book. There are also situations that modern people would not necessarily find themselves in. Like the helmet defense stuff is interesting, and one might be able to modify it to an extent, but I don't think even modern soldiers are using that style of helmet anymore. And in that sense, on the one hand, he sort of wants to present it as a self-defense book for modern people, and on the other hand, he also presents these historical situations using period garb that, again, most people just aren't going to find themselves in. As far as recommendations go, I think that it is a solid book if one is looking for a resource for self-defense. Say maybe 80% of it is good for modern self-defense. Again, there are those situations that we're just not going to find ourselves in the modern times. I think if one is a fan of World War II combatives, this probably has a lot more value to them, because again, it's somebody who has studied Fairbairn's methods. You sort of modernize them a little bit, for instance, using a full cover. This is a position we see in a lot of modern self-defense. Fairbairn didn't have it, but it works well with that. So I think, again, you want to take modern World War II combatives and use them in a modern setting. I think that that's a pretty good resource for that. So thank you guys for following along. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know what you think of the review, and I'll see you later.